Hello, I am Dr. Sarika Swami. I am working as Assistant Professor in Department of Pediatrics at Sardar Patel Medical College, and I am here with my new video, and that is on status epilepticus in children. So if we look at the definition, earlier you know very well that it was that if seizure occur for more than 30 minutes, then we label it as status epilepticus. But now International League Against Epilepsy has redefined it, and it has taken the two reference time points to label as having status epilepticus. So first time point is that at which we should start treatment, that is T1, and the second point is that after which continuous seizure activity leads to long-term sequelae, that is T2. So if we look for generalized tonic-clonic seizure, the T1 is 5 minutes and T2 is 30 minutes. If we look at the focal seizures with impaired awareness, then T1 is 10 minutes and T2 is 30 minutes. In absent seizures, T1 is 10 to 15 minutes and T2 is still unknown. The studies are being done. So if we look at the operational definition of status epilepticus, that is that if any continuous seizure activity which occur for 5 or more than 5 minutes, or if child is having 2 or more seizures without regaining consciousness in between, then we label the patient as having status epilepticus. So now I would like to discuss some of the terminologies which are important for us to know. The first is established status epilepticus. You know that benzodiazepine is the first drug that is given in children with status. So if seizure persists after benzodiazepine, then we label the patient as having established status epilepticus. Then comes the refractory status epilepticus. If the seizure activity has failed to respond to two drugs, that is first line drug, that is the benzodiazepines, and the one other, no minimum duration has been ascribed to label it as refractory status epilepticus. But if uh, two drugs have failed to seize the activity of seizure, then we label the patient as having refractory status epilepticus. Then comes the super refractory status epilepticus. We label the patient as having super refractory status when we have put the child on general anesthetic agent and for 24 hours and still the child is having seizures, or when we are trying to reduce the dose of general anesthesia and then the child again develops seizures, then we label the patient as having super refractory status. Then one term is NORS, that is new onset refractory status epilepticus. So it is a type of refractory status epilepticus when patient is having no prior history of seizures or epilepsy. Then is the FIRES, that is fever induced refractory epilepsy syndrome. It is a refractory status that is associated with acute febrile infection. It is para-infectious in nature and it is highly drug resistant, and it is responsive to ketogenic diet. Then the one term is epilepsia partialis continua, that is epilepsy partialis means focal seizures and continuum is continuing. So when constant clonic activity persists and remains limited to one part of body, then it is labeled as epilepsia partialis continua. So now to understand the pathophysiology of status, first we should know how seizures are prevented in a normal person. So you can see this is a graph of action potential. So here when the stimulus is given, so there should be that stimulus should be sufficient enough to uh, generate action potential. So a particular potency of stimulus, when particular threshold of stimulus is reached, then there is depolarization of the membrane and action potential is generated. Then there is repolarization, and after repolarization, to prevent seizure activity, hyperpolarization in there. So when the nerve fiber is in a hyperpolarized state, at that time it becomes very difficult for a normal stimulus also to elicit an action potential. So hyperpolarization or intact hyperpolarization keeps the hyperexcitability in check. And the other factor which is responsible for prevention of seizure activity in a normal person is inhibition that is created by inhibitory neurons. So intact hyperpolarization and inhibition by surrounding neurons doesn't allow seizure to happen in a normal person. Then what happens uh, when it becomes a pathology? So there are two factors in this. One is hyperexcitability of neurons and the other is hypersynchronization. So hyperexcitability, you know that the a particular group of neurons becomes hyperexcitable. It is discharging and discharging. So that leads to a seizure activity. And the other is hypersynchronization. What is that? It means that a hyperexcitable neuron leads to excessive excitability of a large group of surrounding neurons. Means a group is itself is hyperexcited and it also uh, actually stimulates other surrounding neurons to throw the discharges. So what happens in status? So you know very well that glutamate is a excitatory neurotransmitter and GABA is inhibitory neurotransmitter. So if there is failure of desensitization of AMPA glutamate receptors, then there is persistence of increased excitability. So normally what happens as the seizure progresses, gradually there is desensitization of these glutamate receptors and a seizure activity stops. But in status, it is sustained because there is the desensitization doesn't occur and the nerve fiber goes on throwing and throwing. And the other factor is when there is decreased GABA mediated inhibition. GABA normally inhibits the seizure activity, but if there is there is decreased GABA mediated inhibition, then again it leads to continuing of seizure activity. Then if we look at the epidemiology, it's a common pediatric neurological emergency. We are seeing cases on daily basis. The incidence is 18 to 23 per 1 lakh children per year. Mortality is 2 to 7%. And most common cause of status in children is febrile status epilepticus. Then if we look at the etiology, it may be acute neurological conditions, they may be chronic CNS disorders, or we may not find a cause. In that case, we label it as idiopathic one. So acute neurological emergencies may be in the form of CNS infections like meningitis and encephalitis. There may be electrolyte imbalance like hypocalcemia and hypoglycemia. Then some of the inborn error of metabolism which lead to accumulation of the toxic metabolites, then it may cause status. And head injury cases and cerebrovascular accidents, that is pediatric stroke, is also a cause of status epilepticus. Then chronic CNS disorders, various chronic conditions like neonatal non-progressive insult in the form of HIE, that is hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy because of perinatal asphyxia, or if some space occupying lesions of the brain like tumors, abscess, and some previous bleed, or some of the CNS malformations, or progressive encephalopathy as is seen in cases of some metabolic neurometabolic conditions, they may cause status. And when we don't find any cause, then we label it as idiopathic, and they may be a febrile status or afebrile status. Some of the salient points we must keep in mind uh, while we are managing a case of status. We should keep in mind that status epilepticus is a life-threatening neurological emergency, and if we intervene in time, we can save the child in terms of mortality as well as morbidity. And this is one situation in pediatric medicine when control of seizure should take precedence over detailed evaluation. As a child comes to us, what we usually do at that we take history, we do examination, and then we intervene. But here, please keep in mind that you have to first try to control the seizure, and then you can go for a quick neurological examination, or you can quickly take history to guide your management, but first please try to control the seizures. Then the other very important thing is that non-convulsive status epilepticus is a condition which should be kept in mind, because it is not presenting to you as a like convulsive in which you can see obvious motor activity. Here actually, if you don't have this condition in mind, you will not be able to diagnose. So if a child is presenting to you with cognitive disturbances, mood disturbances, abnormal eye movements, or some psychotic state, then you should think that yes, this child may be a case of non-convulsive status, and in that case you have to go for urgent EEG testing, and if EEG discharges abnormal seizure activity is found on EEG, then the case is one of NCSE. Then benzodiazepines are always first choice, and please try to give the drug intravenously. It is the best way to control the seizure on emergency basis. Then CNS injury can be there even when patient is paralyzed with neuromuscular blockade but is having electrographic seizure. So we should attach EEG monitor to a child who has lapsed in refractory status, and we should try to control the EEG seizures also. Then the other thing which you should keep in mind, that early control of seizure is associated with better outcome, because prolonged seizure activity that lasts for more than 1 hour may lead to hypotension, hyperkalemia, lactic acidosis, hypoglycemia, myoglobinuria, acute tubular necrosis. Multiple organs may be involved and child may succumb of the condition. So we should intervene early. Then one term comes in reference to uh, status epilepticus is a benign postictal pleocytosis. So approximately 20% of the patients of status may have CSF pleocytosis with a WBC count of 80 cells per microliter. And at that time you may feel that yes, this may be a case of either bacterial meningitis or viral meningitis. But please keep in mind that the WBC in CSF are normally increased after that much seizure activity. So unless you exclude the meningitis or encephalitis, you should treat the patient as having meningitis. But once it is excluded with the culture or other ways, then after excluding all those conditions, we can label the patient as having benign postictal pleocytosis of CSF. Then if seizures are refractory to frontline anticonvulsants, then we should attach a EEG monitor and we should go for continuous EEG monitoring. Then what investigations we have to go for in cases of status? Some of the investigations which are always recommended, and some are individualized on the basis of your history and physical examination. So if child is a case of new onset status, then we should go for serum electrolytes and blood glucose abnormalities we should look, because if hypocalcemia is there or any electrolyte imbalance is there, then we can actually correct it and the seizures will be controlled as soon as we will intervene with that abnormality. Say if child is having hypoglycemia, we should look for it, because if it is there, then as we give glucose, child will be all right. Then neuroimaging and EEG we have to go for. Then on detailed history and physical examination, if we find, then we should go for a CBC, then we should go for a lumbar puncture, CSF examination, metabolic testing if we are suspecting inborn error of metabolism, or if we suspect that if the child may be a case of poisoning like organophosphorus poisoning, then toxicological screening of blood and urine also we should go for. Then if status occurs in a child who is already a known case of epilepsy, then we should go for anti-epileptic drug levels and EEG. And depending on the condition, the history and examination, we can go for CBC, serum electrolyte examination, blood glucose and neuroimaging. Now, what are the indications of lumbar puncture? So, when clinical suspicion of meningitis or encephalitis is there, especially in children less than 2 years of age, when signs of meningitis are not very obvious, then we should think of going for a lumbar puncture to rule out meningitis and encephalitis. Then, what are the indications of neuroimaging? This is not so that in every case you have to go for neuroimaging, but if seizures are refractory to treatment, if progressive neurological findings are there on serial examination, then we should think of going for neuroimaging. If focal seizures are there, if worsening of focal findings on EEG you find, then again it is an indication of neuroimaging. If there is suspicion of raised intracranial tension, you may think that child may be a case of space occupying lesion or some intracranial bleed, then you should go for a neuroimaging. After head injury, obviously, certainly you have to go for a neuroimaging. And if surgery is considered, as in cases of super refractory status, then again this is an indication of neuroimaging. Then indications of EEG, first and foremost is if child is a case of refractory status epilepticus, please attach EEG monitors. Then to confirm that an episode of status has ended. And the third and very important is if you suspect non-convulsive status in a child, then please go for EEG. Let us see how we manage a case of status epilepticus or a child who has come to us in status. So first is the general management that includes airway, breathing and circulation, how we manage ABC, and the specific drug therapy that is required to manage a case of status epilepticus. So ABC, the first is airway. So as the child is not conscious, so every effort should be made to keep the airway open, and for that we apply head tilt chin lift maneuver so that airway can be kept open. So what is that? I will explain you in the next slide. Then if there are secretions in the mouth or nose, or child has vomited, then we have to clear the airway by gentle suctioning, and then we should put the child in recovery position so that child doesn't aspirate. So this picture is very well showing how we perform head tilt and chin lift maneuver. So you can see that we press the forehead down, and by putting two fingers under the chin we lift the chin. So this opens the airway, or this makes the airway in one line, that is pharynx and trachea come in one line, so the breathing becomes easy for the patient. And this is the recovery position. You can see that this patient is lying in recovery position, that is a side tilted position with the bent leg that is inhibiting to the patient to rolling forward, and head is tilted well back, and that head is supported by this left hand of the patient, and this bent arm is giving stability. Okay, so this is the recovery position. So this prevents aspiration of the contents in the airway. Then breathing, we have to check for breathing whether there are any signs of respiratory distress. If there are signs of respiratory distress in the form of tachypnea or subcostal intercostal retraction or suprasternal retraction, or child is having cyanosis, then we have to give oxygen by face and by face mask or nasal cannula. If impending respiratory failure is there, then certainly the patient will require mechanical ventilation. Then circulation is checked by pulse rate, blood pressure measurement and capillary refill time. So we should secure IV line and give crystalloids if required. So which crystalloids we are using in the cases of status epilepticus, because there is some degree of cerebral edema is there because of continuing seizures, so we avoid giving hypotonic fluids. So we give either NS plus D10 in equal amounts, or we use Ringer lactate. If patient is in shock, then definitely the management of shock as in the form of first the fluid therapy, and then if inotrope if they are required. Then coming to specific drug therapy. So as soon as the patient comes to us and the general measures in the form of taking care of airway, breathing and circulation are continuing, we along with that we are also giving anticonvulsant simultaneously. Okay, so if IV access is available, then we are giving IV injection lorazepam, in the doses of 0.1 milligram per kilogram, that too at the rate of 2 milligram per minute. And we can also use midazolam if lorazepam is not available. If IV access is not available, then we can use buccal or intranasal midazolam, or we can give per rectal diazepam. Okay. Then once the patient has crossed that 5-minute period and still having seizures and is not controlled with the first line agent, that is benzodiazepine, then we label the patient as having established status epilepticus, and in that case we can repeat the lorazepam or we can give midazolam. And if seizures are not controlled with this, then we go for IV phenytoin. Loading dose is 20 milligrams per kilogram, but please take care and have in mind that you have to dissolve phenytoin in normal saline because it is precipitated with glucose solutions. Or we can use phosphenitoin. The dose is same, 20 milligram per kilogram phenytoin equivalent is the dose. And this phosphenitoin is having advantage of it is less irritant, toxicity is less with phosphenitoin, and it can be dissolved in any of the solution. Okay, and we can repeat injection phenytoin with dose 10 milligrams per kilogram if there is no response with the first dose. Then we have tried with the benzodiazepines, we have given phenytoin or phosphenitoin, but still the child is having seizures. Then we label the child as having refractory status epilepticus. And now first thing is, at this time you should attach EEG monitor to the child, and we have to go for either injection valproate in the doses of 20 to 40 milligrams per kilogram, or we can use injection phenobarbital, and we can repeat phenobarbital if required in the, lesser doses. Or if the child is having a liver disease or some metabolic disease is suspected, or child is one with coagulopathy, or child is on chemotherapy, then levetiracetam is a better choice. Then in children less than 2 years, we should consider IV pyridoxine if child is having refractory status, and you have not found a clear etiology, then we should try IV pyridoxine in such cases. Then if still not controlled with these, then we go for starting an infusion of midazolam after giving a bolus dose, and we can titrate it upwards if required up to maximum of 30 micrograms per kilogram per minute. And once the child is seizure free for 24 hours, we can start tapering the doses. If in any case PICU admission is delayed or ventilation facility is not available, then we can use injection levetiracetam or injection sodium valproate if we have not used it earlier. If paraaldehyde is available, that is also an option. Then if still not controlled with all these measures which I have mentioned above, then we should think of coma induction. But before going for coma induction, we should at least give a trial of topiramate to the patient. So we have started midazolam infusion, but still the child is having seizures. Then we should think of high dose. Then we have 4 options. One is high dose phenobarbital, in which we give repeated boluses of phenobarbital, or we can use injection thiopenton. We can give short-term propofol, or injection ketamine is also a choice in cases who are not controlled with midazolam infusion. Then if the child lapses into a state of super refractory status epilepticus, then we are having topiramate, or we sometimes we need to start inhaled anesthesia with isoflurane or desflurane. Then ketogenic diet, epilepsy surgery, controlled hypothermia, immunotherapy in the form of steroids, IV immunoglobulins, or plasma exchange are other options. Magnesium infusion can be tried, and electroconvulsive therapy and deep brain stimulation are other options. Uh, then what are the various complications? So a prolonged seizure activity, as I have told you earlier also, can cause many of the metabolic disturbances in the body. And if we look at the various systems which are affected because of prolonged seizure activity, so child may have cardiac arrest and may die. initial cases, in the initial states, the child is having hypertension. Then later on, the child develops hypotension. Child may develop cardiac arrhythmias. If we look at the respiratory complications, then there may be neurogenic pulmonary edema. Child may have aspiration pneumonia, and in the kidneys there may be rhabdomyolysis, and subsequently myoglobinuria may cause renal shutdown. Then because of autonomic disturbances, there may be hyperpyrexia, excessive sweating, vomiting, and dehydration. Electrolyte imbalance may occur. And if we look at the metabolic complications, then acidosis, azotemia, hypoglycemia, hyperkalemia, hyponatremia, hepatic failure may be there, or child becomes more prone to develop infections of respiratory system, urinary tract infection, skin, and he is also prone to develop nosocomial infections. So what is the prognosis? The prognosis depends on what is the etiology of the seizure, what is the duration of seizure, associated systemic abnormalities, type of seizures, and mode of therapy. If seizures are those of febrile status or idiopathic, then prognosis is good. If seizures, if the patient is having septic shock and the seizure have occurred for more than 45 minutes, then there is chances of high mortality. Overall mortality in cases of status epilepticus is 5%. Long-term sequelae because of prolonged seizure activity may be there, and child may develop encephalopathy, he may have focal neurological deficits, mental retardation may be there, and child may have epilepsy. So in the last, I would like to say that aggressive management is having a key role, and it can reduce mortality as well as morbidity. Use of intramuscular, rectal, intranasal, and buccal routes for anti-epileptic drugs may circumvent problems of IV access. So if IV access is not available, then we should try intramuscular, rectal, intranasal, and buccal routes. Promotion of domiciliary management can decrease burden. So this applies to those patients who are cases of epilepsy. So we can train the parents in domiciliary management, like we can train them how the child can be managed at the time of having, if he has seizures at home, like child should be kept in recovery position. If if seizures are there for more than 5 minutes, then they can give buccal or intranasal midazolam. So that pre-hospital management is associated with shorter ICU stay, reduced time to regain consciousness, higher chances to return to baseline function at discharge, and fewer medical complications. Thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much.